called?
Faith
It's
like
called Faith
potatoes.
Like Goddamn
Faith
Potatoes.
like potatoes. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah, cool. Welcome, friends. Welcome, potato lickers. Welcome back to Sun.
Sunday Cinematic Service.
And in this episode, we're going to be looking at the 2006 South African film Faith Like Potatoes, a heartwarming tale of one man's 100% devotion to God that things will go a-okay for him on his little farm. So, we should probably start off by doing a roundtable on what we thought of the cinematic thing that we just watched. Marcus, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I suppose I could give like a brief synopsis for anyone who's not seen it as well. The film is about a farmer in South Africa who is a very angry man who can't farm. It's too difficult for him. But then he prays to God, and inexplicably, it's significantly easier. And then he decides to become a preacher rather than a farmer. I suppose there's a bolderized version of it. But yeah, it's pretty terrible. It's fairly racist as well. Has a very poor portrayal of Christianity within the film, but is not badly paced. And it's probably not anywhere near the worst thing that we've ever seen for this. What do you think, Heath? I suppose before we go into it further.
Yeah, no. It's not bad. In like the way it's made. A lot of the messaging in it is not so great. But yeah, you're right. It's not the worst thing like I've seen. And there were times there where I was like, I'm with this guy. I hope he makes his farm makes it. And then like I remembered that he beats black people and whatnot. But that's neither here nor there. He's a man of God.
Yeah. No, that's also my reaction as well. Yeah, by probably by some margin, not the worst thing we've ever watched as part of this series. Um, and there were moments where I was convinced I was watching like a real film. But yeah, then stuff would happen where it would just I will get into it, but there's stuff that happens that pulls you out of the film, and then you remember the foundation of racism that this film of this story is built upon, and then that's it. So no, not a terrible film, not by any stretch. There's some filmmaking craft in here, I guess, but yeah, it's also not great either. The 2 hours flew by though. To be fair,
Yeah.
I remember watching those. Like we watched some stuff where it was been about 90 minutes, and that's felt like eternity compared to this.
Yeah.
So that's one thing in the film's credit.
Yeah, I've got to say though, it's well made in like the way like a Hallmark film is or something
Yeah,
that's very bland and every establishing shot's quite nice, and then you're like, okay, go on. Then it keeps going. Every scene's about a minute long, where it'll be like introduce some conflict, shout a little bit, resolution, and then next sort of scene. It's very much like paint by numbers filmmaking. Considering as well, it's a bit of an auteurist project for Hack McHaxon, whoever the director is, who also wrote it and stuff. It has barely any noticeable like style or anything to it.
Yeah, no,
Work.
yeah, I'd agree with that. It was done very competently, but like also competent is not necessarily like the order of the day in most Christian films anyway. So, I like in the like rankings of filmmaking, yeah, it's down there low. But in the rankings of Christian filmmaking, it's up there. I'll give it that.
Yeah, at least everything was in focus, I suppose. So that's not the worst thing.
you got to count your blessings in these sort of things.
I suppose as well. This was made before like the sort of swell in Christian filmmaking and stuff like that we have seen over the last sort of 5 years or so. So I think that maybe even longer actually. Now I think about it, But yeah, I think that potentially this was brought out at the right time to for it to actually have some production value, not just shot in a church, shot in someone's house, shot in a church, shot in someone's house. That sort of.
Well, one of the main benefits it's got because of the time period. I'm assuming it would have been shot on film. Like digital wouldn't have looked like this sort of back then. So that'll give it a level of clarity above, like, because a lot of the reason why these Christian films are so cheap now is because it's digital filmmaking. So obviously film's a lot cheaper and it's doing everything in one location. So there's no expectation of it going to cinemas anymore. So like, the production values have gone down as well. So I suppose
and like in its defense as well, the film gets how the basic narrative of like a biopic film works. You need to have your character have their kind of the central conflict thing, which they're like big third act moments, so to speak. So in this case, it's this guy's desire to either host a big evangelical thing in a stadium and grow potatoes in a drought, I guess. Like it kind of gets that basic narrative flow, even if the final product comes across as being very episodic. We were wondering, well, was this like a mini series that we kind of cut down into like a 2 hour film version? But again, as I said, to the film's credit, it does get like how these, have a very basic level of how a biopic narrative should work, which again, considering some of the stuff we've watched as part of this series, is some semblance of narrative coherence is appreciated for sure.
Yeah, well, the problem with it is that it does understand them, but it can't. I'm assuming
it doesn't know how to do it.
It doesn't know how to do it, and also it's based on the guy's own biography. So literally, the guy, what will happen is he'll have an issue, then it'll turn out that either there is no resolution to it, he's just completely different for no reason, or in I think the most offensive part of the film. So he kills a child at one point by driving his tractor. The kid falls off and goes under the wheel of it, and then the guy who's it's not his son, it's his brother's child, I think, or it's like some kind of his nephew. And then the dad of the child calls him up and says, "Oh, I had a dream, and he's actually glad to be in heaven, and he's waiting for me." And then there is no more issues anymore. It's actually good the child's died, essentially. And his early thing that's supposed to drive him is that he's an angry man. He can't contain himself, and not even really that. It's the fact that he works too hard on the farm and doesn't have any time for anything else. Then he goes to church and it's just resolved again with no actual difference to his life, or like it never shows him working any less, or it shows him less angry, but it doesn't actually show any of the things that made him angry being resolved by God or anything like that.
Well, in the first half of the film, they set up that the baby cries when they have an argument. Did you hear that baby cry after he found Jesus? Yeah.
This is true. Yes, yeah. I wasn't paying enough attention to the subtle diegetic cues.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I agree. Like, I think that's like one of the things that helped it with the pacing. Like with pacing though, is that like it was very much like these little sort of 3-act vignettes just stapled together. That happened to be this guy's story, but yeah, it was it did get a bit sort of formulaic towards the end, but they stuck that formula out, man, just the whole time. They were very consistent with it.
Yeah. And we joked constantly throughout that, when are they going to get to the potato farm, as Chris said. But,
oh, yeah. Sorry. Should we, we'll call spoilers here for anyone who's interested.
Spoiler that's kind of given away in the description of the film itself. But
I think, the spoiler is that it takes, an hour and a half to get to the fucking potatoes.
So yeah, a more narratively competent film would have set up the fact that the potatoes are important, well, to get into sort of the dodgy politics of it a little bit, maybe a good film could have been that, like, the people are starving and they desperately need the potatoes to. Because he's supposed to be a bit of a missionary, which isn't really touched on. He's building all these stuff for the villagers around him, and sort of he's at an orphanage at one point. He's adopted 20 kids, which is just revealed in one random bit of dialogue. But maybe the potatoes could have been like sustenance needed for everyone and that. But no,
Yeah.
all it does is reference the potatoes about 10 minutes before the end.
Well, they mentioned potatoes like I think like once in like the first hour and a half about like how it's quite a lucrative business for a farmer. Well, that's it. But like they're not mentioned again until like the last literal 20, 30 minutes of the film. It's like, you gotta sow the seeds, you know what I mean? Like sow those narrative seeds earlier, build up to it.
Yeah, I think they.
Yeah, and that.
I think they were like coasting on that one scene at the start where they were like, potatoes are difficult to grow, they need water and thing, and the actual title of the film, Faith Like Potatoes, are like, this will see these people through the next hour and 40 minutes of this film, like till we get to potatoes again.
Yeah, and like the dodgy thing about the film as well is that like it's set in I'm assuming it's apartheid Africa, because the guy in the photo at the end, it's from 2006, looks at least like 30 years older than the actor.
Yeah, like I think it was set in the 70s, I believe.
No.
So yeah, apartheid.
It was later than that. It was after apartheid.
Was it later, right?
Yeah, because they referenced earlier in the film that like Mandela was the president.
Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be sometime in the 90s.
And yeah, like the characters are constantly scared of like the violence just off screen and stuff, and yeah, he's very angry at sort of his black workers and stuff. So yeah, it might have gone a bit away towards that if they'd have established maybe the potatoes or something too. Because I thought, like we were talking all the way through it, that the film would be about how he would like use Christianity would help him with his, soft racism, and like the antagonists seem to be built up to be more racist than him, and like
yeah,
the conventional thing to do would be he's racist at the beginning, then Jesus lets him see through the like the artificial differences, and then he takes on the racists at the country club. But yeah, there's no reference to that at all. Basically,
there's nothing. Yeah,
it's slightly better, and that's it. And even then, not that much better.
Actually, looking at it, it looks like there's a bit of a weird time conflation, because I'm just reading about the guy's life, and apparently he did move to the farm in the mid-70s and he started preaching in the 80s. So I guess the film just didn't care about getting the timeline right.
Yeah.
Well, he does at one point perform a literal miracle, bringing a woman back to life.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah.
And we all know that only happened in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
Change that so it's not as, because I'm assuming they're just about smart enough to realise it might not be acceptable to do a film where everyone talks about black violence just off the screen and he treats black people awfully in it.
Well, yeah, because it's weird, because like throughout the whole third act of the film, he keeps saying how this whole like big sermon that he's building up to do is to stop like all the violence and stuff and the drought. Man, we gotta stop that violence and stuff, but we never see anything of what he's alluding to, besides from the fact that there's a drought, and obviously we can see on the farm there's a drought, but like besides from that, you don't get any sense of like the political landscape or like the real context of when this story is set. And yeah, as doing a little bit of research there, I don't think the film's ultimately bothered about historical accuracy. It's rather just wants to promote its evangelical message, I suppose. It doesn't care about the history.
I'm assuming that is because like they must realize that. I'm assuming the guy himself, we've done a little bit of research, not nicest guy ever, it seems.
No, as we
discussed, is a racist, and also maybe they realized it would maybe be a little bit too dodgy to do a film during apartheid where he's sort of the hero and he treats workers badly, and it's about the violence just off screen. Like they probably realised that maybe he was the bad guy in the apartheid situation.
It's probably a smart. Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously not a smart move, but for the filmmakers trying to promote the message, yeah, they probably don't want to bring up that this guy was, not very good because then, yeah, because like if film actually is set, historically set in the 80s, then those, yeah, he's basically using slaves to build his farm.
Yeah, but though I will say this, like, even though they're not like they're supposed to be like the free people and stuff like that, and I think that's also one of the things that they've like used to sort of offset some of the more like iffy things in it, like with him like hitting the slaves and chasing them, and that. But like whether that's that sort of libertarian type thing where they're like the whole idea of like people can like just choose to be in an employment and stuff like that. So maybe like the post-apartheid thing was to soften that idea that they were just there to they basically all that shitty thing they were doing was sort of their choice to work for him, that sort of thing. But the other thing is though is like pre-apartheid or post-apartheid, the whole film frames him as someone who has done this all, but they also include shots of the people that he's got working for him actually doing the work. Like that part of it for me was just like, okay, I like apart like we're putting the racism aside. We're just putting that over. Like that's the worst thing in the film. The next worst thing in the film for me was like, yeah, this whole idea of him being like this savior and that sort of thing. And but like also, yeah, just also adding in shots of these people actually working, the ones that actually made things happen for him.
Yeah, and as you said as well, like joking around during the film, there's a bit where he's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm working 18-hour days and I've got no money and it's all awful. And he says that well sat in a pub drinking. So yeah, it's hard to have too much sympathy for the guy as well. And he's like, what he wants is so nebulous. In a way, it would have been a lot more interesting film if he was a massive dick at the beginning and then he's racist and stuff, and then like he actually became like it sort of tries to hedge its bets by being so toothless. That yeah, it just becomes sort of uninteresting, and you can't really sympathise with the character too much because he doesn't even seem to have it that bad at the beginning.
No, well, yeah, the way they frame that's one of the things actually from the beginning, is his time in Zambia, where what we see is that he drives into town and then almost gets into an accident, beats the shit out of a black guy, and then moves to South Africa because it's so violent in Zambia. Like, it seemed like it was setting up for that he was this horrible racist person, and then he had his came to Jesus moment, that sort of thing. But then it's just like, no, lost my thought.
Yeah, no, but you're right. But the film sets him up as in like, you think his character arc is going to be, again, maybe in a better film, his character arc could be he goes from being like a violent racist to being a peaceful man of God, right? Like that's the natural character progression if you were to do that sort of story. But instead it just it drops it like at the end of the first act. The first act mini climax is he becomes like a man of faith. And like you just have to accept it, I guess. Some preacher gives a nice speech in a church, gives a nice sermon in a church, and then that's it. That's what converts him then, and which again adds to like the frustrating episodic structure of it. The guy's had his big moment, and then the film tries to have his biggest moment be, like he's gonna, serve his potatoes and do a big sermon at a stadium. I guess I also feel like they should have gone with one or the other for like the big third act finish, if you know what I mean. Like, is he going to pull off the big sermon, or are those scenes actually going to sow? But instead they do both, and I think it just conflicts with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I gave it credit at the start for like on the basic bone structure of getting what a biopic is like, but it kind of misplaces what the key moments for concentration should have been. So you either do, but you either do. I think if this goes with any biopic, really, you either do the full story or you just concentrate on a small part, which I think if you're going to make this into a better film, you're probably better off just concentrating on him moving from Zambia, trying to build his farm, finding faith, and then, kind of ending it there with him building his farm, and you can have, your post credit things, and a little bit of description of what happened to the real people. So.
I agree with that, but I think you're giving the film a disservice because you say that he went and he saw the preacher and it didn't really make sense why he converted. You're actually forgetting that he has a inexplicable flashback to when he was a child.
Oh, yeah.
Which I still don't understand. Is that supposed to be him seeing another sermon when he was a child? They're watching a film at some point. Someone's beckoning him towards him. Does anyone understand what that scene is supposed to mean?
So yeah, so it was some sort of like sermon or something. Like it was a film, and then there seemed to be like some sort of sermon afterwards. And he seemed, and I think the like words were mirroring each other from each sermon. So he was like coming back to God, blah 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 blah. But yeah, the beckoning him away was his friend who was telling him to go away. So I think that was sort of like normal people don't believe in Christianity, which I find ridiculous. That like in like 70s or 80s South Africa, like it'd be difficult to find a fucking Christian.
Really?
What?
The 50s, because it's a flashback when he was a boy.
Yeah.
So if this is set in the 90s, it would be like the 50s or 60s or something.
No, what I'm saying is that like the scene of his friend beckoning him away was sort of symbolic of like the people around him now not being into Christianity and blah 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 blah, which again. Like whether it's the 50s or the 70s, there would have been like a fairly high like fucking Christian population in South Africa.
Yeah, well, that's it's the sort of persecution complex that you get in all these Christian films in microcosm, isn't it? That they're the aggrieved minority that needs to be that everyone's against, kind of thing. That's kind of disappointing. I wish this film had like, if it was actually set in apartheid Africa, but it was pretending he was the aggrieved minority. I think that could have turned it into like a sort of so bad it's good classic. If that.
Yeah, no, I don't think. Yeah, I think that was probably that was a degree of difficulty too high for this director. It's like I'm also writing this film. I can't even like push it off on the writer if this goes bad. So it's like post-apartheid setting. Because everything was fixed immediately after apartheid.
I thought, what did everyone think of the acting in the film? I'll say last actually. So what did everyone think of especially the main actor, who's sort of the anchor the film is based on? He's in pretty much every scene. So.
I will say that the main guy, I'm gonna say his acting comes and goes.
Yeah.
Like there's certain scenes he's in and it's like, yeah, okay, good job. Other scenes it's just like, oh god. Like, you sure there wasn't another take of this? But yeah, the rest of the acting in it, is fine. Like,
yeah, I didn't think it was terrible. Like, it was pretty okay for this sort of film. I actually thought his wife and her friend, I guess, were okay. Like, they had like one. I thought the one kind of genuinely well acted scene in the film was when it's like post the little boy dying and they're having that little talk in the cafe. Both actors did pretty okay there. It was a decent scene. I thought they acted it fairly well. Considering the script and the way it's shot. But I thought that was okay. Props to those actors.
Yeah, I think as you say, I think when everyone is okay in it, apart from the main actor who's fine until he's given something quite meaty to do. Like
Yeah.
the scene when the kid dies and he's in the hospital and he has to be like, oh God, no, why? It feels just embarrassing. Like it keeps going on, and he's just like, why God, why? And over again. It's like one of those sort of joke. It's like a clip from a sort of straight to DVD film, but yeah, he's not very good in the film in those moments.
Well, and also on the back of that, like, know that he has when he's like there with the kid dying on the ground, like it rivals Darth Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith for like ridiculous nose, because it goes on for so long, like. Oh, it's just yeah. But like again, I think due to like previous entries, I think we're potentially giving it too much praise. I don't know. It's good.
Definitely.
It's good for what it's good for its like it's good amongst its contemporaries, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you walked into this without sort of any preconceived notions, you might think it's a bad film. I think you might think so.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to say it's. We don't want people to go out and watch it for no reason. I would probably avoid watching this again. I probably wouldn't have stuck with it if it wasn't for this. There's significantly better films to watch. However, if you have watched things like If Foot Men Tire You, What Will Hot, mind you, that to be fair is a significantly more interesting film that I would rather watch than this. If Foot Men Tire You, What Will Horses Do?
Well, it's better than like something like what was it called? A Matter of Faith, was it? Where it was like, yeah.
Yeah, that one was probably the worst one, and also probably the most reprehensible one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like it's not really bad, but it's not bad either. It's just perfectly fine. Just sits there, not doing very much.
Yeah, like if it wasn't for like, the horrible constant undertone of like racism and violence that was always off screen. If it wasn't for that, like you could almost just be like, yeah, this is like a really good film about a guy doing his best in the world and that sort of thing. Like, it's but the combination of the racism and the Christianity, it turned me off. I've got to say.
For sure, yeah. No, I feel exactly the same. Yeah, because like ultimately, what this could have been is, if you take out the faith aspect, is like a perfectly fine Sunday afternoon Hallmark time filler. Inoffensive. But yeah, it's the way it sanitizes the history of South Africa, which makes it so pernicious. Like even like the faith stuff, like whatever, like it's a Christian film, but like it's the way it sanitizes the very real, very bloody and horrible history of South Africa, which I found most offensive.
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad for that.
Yeah, it's like Disney-fied.
Disney-fied, yeah, and as you were saying as well, like there's so many interesting stuff you could do with the. It could be a really interesting exploration of the of either the history of it, if you were going to say in the 70s, or you could even do about like the post, the actual President Mandela era and stuff. Like he, and a more interesting one, he could have been a racist who didn't like the sort of transition, and then his Christianity could help him work through sort of how he feels about that. Like you could even change the timeline to try and make it a bit cleaner, and then it could still have, interestingly developed the sort of, it could have been an interesting portrait of the actual time itself and stuff. But yeah, it doesn't even bother doing that. And again, it might not be that big of an issue if it didn't, just on the outskirts reference all the actual stuff. Like if it didn't have his sort of racist friends in there, who don't really get any, they basically say some racist stuff and just disappear from the film. Or it didn't have the bits where it's always on about the violence just off screen that he's also working against, then yeah, it might not have made much, it might not have had to go there because it wouldn't have referenced it at all. But the fact it makes these little references and then does nothing with it is the worst part of it, I think.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah, I suppose it's not the deepest film that we've ever talked about, I suppose. So does anyone have anything else to say, or shall we try and cap it off?
I think that if we were to actually go into like the more deeper parts of it, like actually talking about apartheid and all that sort of thing, it'd be too long a video. So I think at this point we've said everything outside of that. Like,
well, I suppose what we normally sort of finish on is how does everyone think it portrayed Christianity itself? Like, how is the religion portrayed in film? Apart from being able to bring people back from the dead, unless tractors killed them. Lightning, fine, God could do that, but tractor deaths, nope.
That's it. Yeah, if you pray hard enough, you'll get whatever you want. Unless it's a little boy that's been crushed by a tractor, then it's a no-no.
And the thing that makes it so weird and all is that, like, he brings one person back to the. If he didn't bring one person back earlier, it would be an issue. But he does kind of. I know that you were saying, obviously, Heath, that in real life, it probably was the person was just knocked out a little bit and then came back. But it does seem to suggest the person had died, sort of within the film, and then he brought them back.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely what it's like portraying, and then yeah, it does make it a bit weird later on down the line where it's just like, it sort of almost reads like because he was sort of just new to Christianity, well, new to his born againness, so he was just new to that, and like so. This thing happens and he brings the girl back to life and that confirms his faith, and but then later on when he's like really faithful and he runs over a kid in a tractor, no, he can't bring them back to life. And what it just reads like is like God only gives a fuck like when he wants to get you in the door. Once you're in the door, you're fucked. Like, you may as well be on your own.
Yeah, or maybe, like in the dream, maybe the woman who got struck by lightning, she didn't want to die. Kid, though, he's much better off now in heaven. Like, maybe the film's actually trying to subtly suggest the woman would have gone to hell, so she got brought back in heaven.
Well, I feel like that would be consistent with the general, like, outside of the frame thinking of this film. Yeah, no, I think that... Yeah, it sort of has a sort of I suppose downhill trajectory on like the miracles that happen in this guy's life. Like, I suppose towards the end, like the two miracles that happened is that he seemed to like fill 1/8 of a stadium and have a prayer meeting and then grow some potatoes. Like, at the start of the film, he's making it fucking rain. He's like saving people, like bringing people back to life. Towards the end, he's like fucking growing potatoes in a field.
Yeah, because it's like, if you are gonna conflate history the way that it does, Ben, like that scene made me chuckle so much. Whereas in the stadium and like the shot you see is like all the empty seats behind him. It's like. It's like, come on, if you're going to go into Disneyland, just fill the whole stadium, like move those extras and put it behind him just for that shot, and then bring him back forward for the rest. Like, it's the least they can do to at least, build this guy up and, end on your big finish, if you know what I mean.
I think, though, that was intentional. I will give them that.
Oh, really?
I will give them credit for that. That I think it was supposed to make you think that no one had turned up, but in fact,
Ah,
an eighth of the capacity of this stadium turned up. Um, this stadium that
It seems
cost him money as well. That was one of the things. Like they were talking about it cost millions of dollars, and I'm like, firstly, no, it doesn't cost that much to rent out a fucking stadium, or no one would do it. Um, and but like the other thing uh is that like this obviously cost money. Like where did he get the money from? Like no, there's no, and then like the thing is from there, like he's used this money to raise money to pay for the stadium, to have this prayer meeting. Like, couldn't this money like help the farmers that are like suffering
well,
and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because then suddenly he materializes enough money to then buy the potato seeds, which we're told are quite expensive. Now, the reason it could be is that they were sold him at a dirt cheap price because there was a drought going on. But irregardless, this guy's got cash to spare that we're not really made, we're not made knowledgeable of.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, well, it seems to have a very literalistic opinion of asking God for things. Like, it seems to be literally that, he can just get, at the beginning, he can get God to literally just command him, and, he can make it rain, he can bring back stuff. It's not very sort of metaphorical. He almost has that, what's it called, where it's like the preachers tell you to pray to God and you'll become a millionaire in America. The church where it's like, oh, go on.
the prosperity gospel.
It's almost a prosperity gospel thing. He seems to get more business help from God than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, except for like when he sort of softens towards his family, there is nothing outside of him advancing his own position through the power of God.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And again, a smart film would have had him, because I think it's trying to go for the fact that he's been softened by God, but it doesn't make him enough of a monster at the beginning. Like he gets angry even at the beginning before he's found Christ. Still, like at one point, the black workers he's got crashed the tractor, and he does get really angry at them. He's like, go away, I never want to see you again. He's like, oh no, come back, we can work this out. Then he just goes straight back to going, no, get away, and sends him out again. So even at the beginning, he seems to have some sort of core of accepting them and trying to forgive them. So it doesn't make him bad enough at the beginning. And yeah, the only thing that sort of shows his marriage is strained is the crying baby and an endless argument about a tie. So yeah, it just won't go far enough in that direction to then redeem him at the end. And he doesn't do anything particularly good personally. Like he does do some things, but you have to pay really close attention to even notice he's done them. Like the orphanage he's started for the villagers. You wouldn't even notice that if you weren't paying attention. He adopts 20 children whose parents died of AIDS. That's just done in 2 lines of dialogue. Yeah, it's just focuses completely on the wrong things, really. And yeah, it spends more time on his farm than the man's life itself, which is bizarre criticism.
Well, it was the amazing miracle of the potatoes. That's the thing that we need to focus on and record in film for his future canonization, like St. Angus of the patron saint of potatoes in South Africa.
So yeah, we've touched on the religious bit. Any sort of last sort of words, I suppose there. Any potato-based metaphors to end it on that could
No.
No. Yeah.
I've got no more thoughts on this. You can watch it for free if you want on a Christian broadcast network. So you just have to give Christians your email address. So we'll see how that goes in the coming weeks. Might end up with a few Bibles or something.